He was called unbeatable, a man who made the ring his throne and the world his audience. But when his body began to fail, glory took its toll. This is the story of the champion who never stopped. Imagine the scene, bright lights illuminating a packed ring, deafening screams echoing from every corner, and in the center of it, a man who seemed invincible. Muhammad Ali, the icon, the legend, the champion who conquered the world not only with his fists, but also with his sharp words and unparalleled charisma. For years, Ali was the embodiment of self-confidence, his face plastered across headlines, his sound echoing on radios, his name drawing crowds. But time, that silent and relentless adversary, began to take its toll, and for the first time, Ali realized he wasn't just fighting men, he was fighting nature itself. The 1970s had already shown the world that the champion was human. The fast, young man, possessed of lightning-fast reflexes and almost superhuman stamina, began to feel the weight of the years and the wars waged inside the ring. The blows once deflected with the lightness of a dance, now found their destination in his face, his body, his bones. Still, he kept going. He kept going because his mind screamed louder than his body. He kept going because giving up was not part of his identity. And it was precisely this persistence that led to the defeats that would mark not only his career but also his life outside of the sport. Against Leon Spinks, a young, virtually unknown man, Ali lost more than a title. He lost his aura of invincibility. Against Larry Holmes, he faced a silent massacre, where each blow he received was a cruel reminder that his body no longer responded as it once did. Still, he persisted. He fought against time, against medical warnings, against his friends, against the clear signs that the price of glory was being mercilessly exacted. And the ultimate price, it wasn't just retirement, it was the Parkinson's diagnosis. A sentence that would haunt him until the end of his days and would transform the way the world viewed not only the fighter, but the man. Today, we'll delve into this phase of Muhammad Ali's life, the bitter defeats, the declining resistance of his body, the almost suicidal insistence on remaining in the ring, and the devastating impact this choice had on his destiny. It was February 15, 1978, in Las Vegas. The ring seemed set for another predictable spectacle. Muhammad Ali, three-time world heavyweight champion, would face a young unknown named Leon Spinks with only 7 professional fights under his belt. For many, the fight would be nothing more than a luxurious training session, another number on the list of victories for the greatest of all time. But when the bell rang, the crowd realized something was different. Ali no longer moved as he used to. His feet, which once glided like a dance, seemed heavy. His reflexes, once instantaneous, were now delayed. Spinks, just 24 years old, entered the ring hungry, with no respect for the legend, determined to make this opportunity his life. Round after round, surprise turned to shock. Spinks advanced, throwing rapid combinations, and never backed down from the legendary figure before him. The young man seemed in disbelief. The blows landed. The champion didn't respond with the same speed and the resilience that had sustained Ali in epic battles against Frazier and Foreman seemed to dissolve in the heat of that night. Ali, though fighting with the dignity of a warrior, couldn't impose his rhythm. His body screamed, and for the first time, the entire world watched the myth being dismantled in real time. At the end of 15 rounds, the unexpected happened. Spinks's gloves were raised. The young man no one believed in had defeated the giant. The cameras captured Ali's silent, sweaty, tired face, staring into space as if trying to comprehend what had happened. It was more than a defeat. It was the first time the entire world had seen the invincible fall without excuse, without accident, simply by the strength of an opponent who dared to believe. Backstage, journalists rushed in, shouting historic headlines. Ali loses to rookie. The king has fallen. For Spinks that night was the beginning of a fleeting glory. For Ali, it was the beginning of a decline he refused to accept. Close friends would later recount that night, he didn't seem shaken by the defeat itself, but by the realization that his body no longer responded to his mind's commands. "I'm still the greatest," he said firmly, even though he knew deep down that something had changed forever. And while the world celebrated the new champion, Ali made a silent decision. He wouldn't stop, not because he needed to prove anything to anyone, but because his identity was fused with the ring. He wasn't just Muhammad Ali, the man, he was Muhammad Ali, the fighter. And that night, even in defeat, he decided it wasn't time to hand over the crown yet. The king stumbled, but he refused to accept his fall. What he didn't know was that by defying time and insisting on continuing, he was paving the way for even more painful battles, not against men, but against his own body. The night of October 2nd, 1980, went down in history not as a glorious spectacle, but as a cruel portrait of what happens when a hero insists on challenging the limits of his body. Muhammad Ali, no longer with the same sparkle in his eyes, stepped into the ring to face Larry Holmes, a younger, faster opponent who carried in his fists the hunger to prove himself the new owner of the crown. Holmes was not just a challenger, he had been Ali's sparring partner, knew his moves, knew how the champion breathed, how he dodged, and most importantly, knew that this was no longer the same Ali. The bell rang, and what followed wasn't a fight. It was a massacre foretold. Holmes attacked with hard combinations, and Ali, sluggish, seemed incapable of reacting. The crowd, which had packed the arena hoping to catch even a glimpse of the great champion, was torn between euphoria for the spectacle and the anguish of witnessing a legend being destroyed before their eyes. Round after round, the punishment mounted. Ali tried to maintain his posture, raised his guard, even risked a few jabs, but it was like watching an aging warrior fight his own shadow. His body no longer obeyed, his reflexes had vanished, and his once superhuman stamina was slowly deserting him. With each blow Holmes landed, the crowd reacted with stifled groans. Many no longer wanted to see it continue. Ali's friends, desperate, called for the fight to be stopped. The street corner screamed, the audience's hearts broke, but Ali, proud, insisted on remaining standing, refusing to abandon the war that was clearly already lost. For him, this was no ordinary fight. It was his honor, his name, his identity that were at stake. The same man who had defeated giants and defied governments could not accept that the world would see him fall without resistance. In the 10th round, trainer Angelo Dundee made the decision Ali would never make alone. He threw in the towel. For the first time, Ali wasn't the one choosing when to stop. He was saved, against his will, from an even worse fate. His face was swollen, his eyes heavy, his steps slow. He wasn't the champion who had conquered the world. He was simply a man defeated by time. And here's the most painful point. Ali should never have been in that ring. The doctors had already warned him. The signs were already clear, but he didn't listen. His mind screamed louder than his body's warnings. This stubbornness, this refusal to accept the end, was what led him to pay the highest price. Because, unlike other defeats, this one didn't just stay in the ring. The damage from that night would echo throughout his life, leaving scars that would never fade. Ali left the ring with his head down, but still undeterred. He believed he could still do it, that he still had the strength to return. This was the cruel illusion that haunted him, the idea that glory was eternal, when in fact, it was already turning into tragedy. And it's at this point that the story becomes even more painful, because the audience which had previously cheered him, now began to wonder, doesn't Ali realize it? Is the greatest of them all willing to sacrifice his own life just to continue being called champion? But before I continue, I need to ask you something. If you've made it this far, please like, subscribe to the channel, and comment on how you feel about seeing an idol push themselves to the limit. This will greatly help bring more stories like this and keep alive the memory of legends who made their mark on the world. Because what comes next is even more intense. When Ali, even defeated, still insists on carrying on, without imagining that the shadow of Parkinson's was already hovering over his destiny after his devastating loss to Larry Holmes. Any other fighter would have known it was time to call it quits, but Muhammad Ali was no ordinary fighter. For him, quitting was not an acceptable word. Even with doctors' warnings, even with friends begging him to leave the ring, Ali refused to accept that time had passed. In his mind, there was still a champion hidden somewhere within that tired body. He believed he just had to train harder, believe harder, endure more. The problem was, there was nothing left to recover. The machine that once worked like lightning was broken. Ali continued to enter gyms, train with young sparring partners, and take blows that left his face scarred, but he still asserted firmly, I still have what it takes to be a champion. The world, however, no longer saw the same brilliance. His interviews, once sharp and full of punchlines, now showed a weary man taking deep breaths between words. Still, his charisma and pride pushed him back into the ring, as if each fight were a test against time and against all those who doubted him. In 1981, Ali faced Trevor Berbick in a fight that would be remembered as the final act of a gladiator. No longer able to support his own armor, his heavy body, slow movement, and delayed reflexes were painful to watch. He was no longer the greatest. He was simply a man trying to reclaim a past that would never return. The crowd no longer roared with the same intensity. Many watched in silence, almost in respect, almost in anticipated mourning. And yet Ali, Held out for 10 rounds against Berbick. He didn't fall. He didn't give up. But he didn't win either. The result mattered little. What hurt most was watching the legend fight against himself. In the end, panting, his eyes lost, he heard the judges declare his defeat. It was the end of his career in the ring, but he seemed unaware that he was also beginning an even crueler battle. The battle against his own body. His friends said Ali seemed addicted to fighting, not for the money, not for the fame, but for the need to prove to himself and the world that he was still capable. This desire, however, blinded him to reality. With each blow he took, each sleepless night, each training session where sweat mixed with fatigue, he moved closer to the sentence already written in his destiny. Ali was never just a fighter, he was a symbol, and symbols refused to fade away. In silence, that's why, even when defeated, even when limited, he kept repeating, "I am the greatest. I will always be the greatest." It was almost a mantra, a desperate attempt to keep alive the flame that the whole world was already watching fade. And it was in this suicidal persistence that the greatest tragedy unfolded. The first signs that something was wrong, far beyond the ring, slight tremors, speech difficulties, memory lapses, symptoms he tried to hide, but which already heralded the arrival of the invisible enemy that would change his life forever. Parkinson's. The crowd, which had previously wept with emotion upon seeing him win, now wept with pain upon seeing him persist, because the question was no longer whether Ali could still fight, but how much time remained before glory turned into irreversible suffering. The first blow didn't come from a fist. It came from a slight tremor in his right hand, holding a coffee cup that clinked on its saucer like a warning bell. He smiled, flicked his wrist, and hit the floor with his usual charm. But in practice, the dance lost half a step. His foot dragged, his jab was late, his tongue stumbled. "I'm just tired," he replied, wiping away sweat that seemed colder than usual. The mirror revealed a face that was still legendary, but already carrying its own shadows. His body whispered a warning that his mind rejected. Outwardly, he laughed, and at night, when everything fell silent, he felt his finger tremble stubbornly, small, persistent, almost humiliating. As he signed an autograph, the letter shrank, as if the name wanted to fit into a smaller space. Those closest to him avoided comment, but their eyes spoke volumes. He lifted his chin and promised, "Tomorrow I'll wake up early, run more, silence my body with a scream. That's it, for now." The day of the exam began with an awkward silence. In the office, the clock was making excessive noise. The doctor asked, "Speak a long sentence." He spoke, but his voice was low, as if weighted. "Put your fingers together, touch your nose, walk in a straight line." He obeyed, irritated by his own slowness. Angelo stared at the floor. The family tensed. "It's not just fatigue," someone whispered. He counted, "I've fought worse and come back better." The doctor didn't argue. He wrote it down. He asked to write a simple message. The handwriting, once as large as a poster for a fight, shrank, until it fit in a corner of the page. He laughed awkwardly. "I'm in a hurry." No one believed him. The doctor took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "There are signs of stiffness, slowness, tremor at rest." He heard half of it, blocked out the rest. "Doctor, I'll run tomorrow. It will pass." The doctor raised his hands. "My job is to warn, yours is to take care." And for the first time, he avoided looking at home. The silence took on a new weight. The spoon tapped against the glass, and everyone pretended not to hear. The children watched from the sidelines, trying to protect their father with smiles. His wife held his hand, warming his fingers, as if she could teach his body to remember. "It's just a bad day," he said, and swam against his own pride to stay afloat. When he put on his suit, his tie stubbornly slipped from its knot, and the mirror revealed a face too tired for his age. "You don't need to prove anything anymore," she said firmly. He took a deep breath, as he had before the first bell. "Yes, I do. I need to prove myself." The fear wasn't of pain, it was of oblivion, of becoming a statue, a voiceless symbol. He prayed quietly, alone, asking for the courage to hear what he didn't want to accept. The next day, a fan extended his hand. He squeezed it tighter, to hide the flaw. Smiles, photos, memories. He looked up at the sky, and for a moment seemed to accept that something had changed forever. And the night lengthened. The word hadn't yet been spoken aloud, but it hovered around the house like a cold wind. At the next appointment, the doctor spoke slowly, looking into his eyes. "We may be facing something progressive." He closed his hand, as if closing the door on an intruder. "I'll come back better," he said almost reflexively. "Maybe it's not a question of coming back," the doctor replied, Silence. In the garage, the punching bag hung quietly. "Stay with me," he whispered to his body. He climbed the stairs carefully, past the trophy shelf, and each gleam seemed to take on a memory. He picked up the old gloves, smelled the history and sweat, and understood that the fight had now changed. Rings, there was no audience. There was time, there was fear, there was love, and there was a decision that could no longer be postponed. His wife touched his shoulder. "We'll get through this together." He nodded, but his eyes still searched. The ring in the void. "If I stop, who am I?" he asked. "You are more than a title," she replied without hesitation. Tomorrow will bring harsh answers, and he knew, to stay alive, he would have to accept losing. Because glory also exacts interest, and only those who know how to say enough win. He signed his retirement with a hand that was already shaking, and the silence seemed louder than any ring bell. In the room, newspaper clippings, yellowed photos, gloves hung like tired birds. The medical news fell like a verdict. Parkinson's. There were no more rounds. There were long days. He took a deep breath, felt the weight of each old blow returning. Like a shadow, he looked at his family, at the trophies, at the mirror that showed back a warrior without armor. "I wasn't born to give up," he murmured, but his body responded with a discreet, firm, definitive tremor. That afternoon, he understood. To remain in the ring would be to betray his own history. He put away his gloves. He embraced his weakness, and chose, for the first time, to win by saying enough. At the door, fans expected a wave. He gave more, a smile and a grateful look. The world understood. Glory had taken a heavy toll, but it would not take his name. He left there not out of fear, but out of love for the life he had left. Out of respect for his family, he learned a new choreography. Short steps around the house, medicine on the table, long pauses between one sentence and the next. He discovered that courage also means asking for help, accepting an outstretched arm, laughing at one's own slowness. On good days he told stories. On bad he listened to the wind. The world saw him tremble, and he restored dignity. He didn't hide it. He transformed fear into a public gesture, weakness into a symbol, pain into a language that every defeated person understands. He visited friends, embraced strangers, lent his name to research, opened doors so others wouldn't walk alone. When his voice failed, his gaze said it all. "I'm here, I'm still me." He didn't renounce the ring, he simply gave it another place. Now he fought for time, for presence, for love. He lost speed, gained silence. He lost titles, gained meaning. And he discovered that the rarest glory is to reach one's limit without losing one's soul. In the final photograph, there is no belt. There are joined hands, and in them, an answer. Stay alive, even when the body says no. He won when he accepted losing. Because unbridled glory exacts high interest, and the bill, sooner or later, arrives. There he teaches us that stopping isn't running away. It's protecting what can still flourish. That identity isn't just about victory, it's truth. That no applause is worth more than hearing a leisurely "I love you." If you carry your own struggles, listen. Don't trade your health for applause. That disappears the next day. Celebrate your limits. Take care of yours. Choose the time to pause before the pause chooses you. Honor the road, but don't sacrifice your heart on the altar of the next goal, the next award, the next like. The greatest courage isn't getting on stage. It's knowing when to step down at the right time. And when life shakes, remember the champion's creed. I am greater than my victories and greater than my falls. I choose to live. If this story touched you, share it with those who need it. Transform respect into care, memory into prevention. Heroes pass. What remains is what we do. Muhammad Ali's story isn't just about a man who won fights, lifted belts and captivated crowds. It's about someone who dared to face human limitations with the same courage with which he faced giants in the ring. He shows us that life is made of cycles, and that however difficult it may be to accept the end of one, it is in that end that the true meaning of our journey is often born. Ali teaches us that greatness lies not only in victories celebrated with fireworks and applause, but also in the dignity with which we face inevitable defeats. He lost to time, but never to fear, and that was perhaps his greatest victory. How many times do we insist on fighting battles that no longer make sense? How many times do we place our pride above our health, our peace, our affections? Ali shows us, by his example, that there is no shame in giving up, that giving up a fight can often be the most courageous and human act we can take. He left the ring, but he never stopped being a champion. And this is the message that spans generations. It doesn't matter if your body trembles, if life imposes limits on you, if the applause fades. What matters is how you choose to live each second, how you transform pain into a legacy, and how you choose to resist even when your fate seems already written. Ali proved that there is no glory without a price, but he also showed us that the price of glory doesn't have to be total destruction. He knew how to transform his weakness into a flag, his pain into awareness, his silence into inspiration. He accepted being human before millions, and in that gesture, he became even more eternal. Because, in the end, people don't just remember the quick punches, the resounding victories, or the golden belts. They remember the man who, even sick, took the Olympic stage to light a flame and show the world that hope doesn't waver. And that's the lesson we leave here. Your life is worth more than any title, more than any fleeting victory. Take care of yourself, respect your limits, know when to stop when necessary. True strength doesn't lie in ignoring your body or silencing the signals of your soul. True strength lies in recognizing that the greatest struggle is to live fully, with courage, with love, with dignity. Muhammad Ali left the ring, but he never stopped fighting. And if there's one thing we can learn from him, it's that glory lies not only in defeating others, but in defeating yourself every day. If this story resonated with you, keep it as a reminder. Don't wait for your body to scream before hearing the silence of your soul. And when your time comes to say, enough is enough, do so with the same pride as someone raising their arms in the center of the ring. Because living consciously is the greatest victory.